Hello. It's kind of hard to see that this is more than just a red lump unless I turn it. See the gilded pages there? This is my copy of Treasure Island. It's, I don't know if it's leather, but it's leathery, and it's got a carved image here that is impossible to convey on the on the QuickTime there. So you'll just have to take. Oh, it says it on the side. But that's one of the Wishbone episodes that I watched last night. That and the first one, which was The Count of Monte Cristo. I have read this book, Treasure Island. I have not read The Count of Monte Cristo, although I have had it in my possession longer than most of the books that I have. And that's because there was a buy two, get the third free sale of Barnes& Noble Classics at one point. This was back when the Barnes& Noble Classics were hardcovers. And I think I needed to get Wuthering Heights to read it over the summer, and I got with it War and Peace and The Count of Monte Cristo. I probably got The Count of Monte Cristo because around the same time that Guy Pearce, Jeremy Irons Time Machine movie came out, another Guy Pearce movie came out, The Count of Monte Cristo. And I remember seeing both, and I liked The Count of Monte Cristo more, and so I guess that's why I had that book, and I didn't have The Time Machine as a book until years later. But then I opened the book to read it, and the first thing in the introduction says, this is an incomplete, abridged translation of The Count of Monte Cristo. There does not exist a complete, unabridged translation, and I think I just stopped reading right there, because if I'm, this is something that I continue to hold to, if I'm going to commit myself to hundreds of pages of dense classic literature, text, etc., it better be the whole thing, unless it's so great that I'm going to want to read a longer version in the future. When I read The Stand, the Stephen King book, I was, I didn't think it needed to be that long, but I was glad that I was reading the longest version. I guess the original one was 800 or so pages, and this one is over 1,000. And I thought, I want to see the director's cut. I want to see. I'm probably only going to read it once, so I want to get all of it. And so I did not read that. Maybe I will now, but I know that Penguin Classics offers a very good translation that I'm going to now look for in library sales. Penguin Classics is good about that. I think my Phantom translation that I recently read is Penguin Classics, but that is all beside the point. In addition to that Guy Pearce Count of Monte Cristo movie, I had, of course, seen The Count's Accountant, which is the Wishbone version. And the premise of The Count of Monte Cristo, the book, is a man is falsely accused of treason, so that he is imprisoned, and people who want the things that he has, a lovely woman that is in love with him, the position of captain aboard his ship, he's worked hard and has a lot, and other people want his stuff, and so they have him arrested. And so he goes to an island prison. He's there for a long time. He meets an older man, and that older man knows where the treasure of Monte Cristo is, and if Edmond Dantes helps him escape, Edmond Dantes is the main character, the Wishbone character, then he will share the treasure. And he dies before they escape, but Edmond Dantes then escapes, gets the treasure, becomes the Count of Monte Cristo, and takes his revenge. And it's really quite good. It's by Alexandre Dumas, the same guy who wrote The Three Musketeers, which I'm pretty sure Wishbone did. And, well, I'll tell the way that I've kind of read that when I get to that episode of Wishbone. So the premise of the Wishbone episode is the real people, the real world, is that Wanda has waited for the weather to turn so that she can plant very delicate flowers in her garden. In the opening, Sam and Wishbone are helping her dig in her garden to plant these flowers that, if it gets at all cold, the flowers will die. So Wanda has had to wait until it gets warm enough. Meanwhile, David, I don't know if this is connected to a school project or anything, has created a snow machine. No, it's not. He just said he wanted to go sledding in the summertime. I like this David guy. So he has created a snow machine, and everybody lives very close to each other. So he starts demonstrating the snow machine. A little snow comes down on the flowers, and initially it freaks Wanda and Sam out, but then they see that David has done this impressive thing. Now, Damont, and I'm not sure why. No, he appears early on, and he likes to bully not only the kids, but apparently he refers to Wanda as Weird Wanda. So she is the local eccentric that the kids make fun of, I guess. And I don't know if we get a little deeper into Damont, like The Simpsons eventually explored Nelson Muntz and went into the what makes a bully a bully. One of his friends is with him as he's plotting his plot in this episode and says, "I hope you're always friends, Damont." And he thinks the kid's being ooey gooey, but the kid says, "No, I don't want to be on your bad side." So there's a little there. But Damont is jealous of David's brilliance and wants to get David in trouble. And so he, at night, and I don't know why David leaves it out. He kept his robot in his garage, but he leaves his snow machine out on the porch. Damont pulls it over and blankets Wanda's garden with snow, which of course kills her flowers. And she, for some reason, believes that David would be capable of doing that sort of thing and blames him. I don't think Sam and Joe actually think that he did it. Somehow they... Joe finds Damont lurking around the machine, and that's how they figured out it was him. So David sets a trap. He pours dye into the machine and plugs up the nozzle so that if someone tries to use it, they will get sprayed with red dye. And of course Damont does. And it also gets Wishbone, who is for some reason out and about, no one watching him in the middle of the night. And who's watching Damont? But anyway, so that's that episode. And so falsely accused. David falsely accused, grounded as a result of being falsely accused, which is the kid version of going to jail. That's not kid jail, juvenile hall. So what else did I? Let's see. What else did I write down? I think that's pretty much it. I wrote down the name of the old guy, Abe Faria. And as an apology for turning Wishbone pink, and again, Wishbone shouldn't have been out, but I get Wishbone had to be out for the action to be focused there, I guess. But as an apology for turning Wishbone pink, David maybe he does make his own adjustments to it, but he gives Wishbone, it looks like a gumball machine, but it's a treat dispenser, and every time Wishbone presses on the bone-shaped lever, he gets a treat. And I guess they do make those things for dogs. It seems like a way for the dog to just get all the treats right away. Which I'm not going to have a dog, but if I ever had a dog, I wouldn't get them that sort of thing. It's a very good episode. I look forward to finally reading the Count of Monte Cristo one day. I do have the Three Musketeers, so I probably will get to that first. And it's a fun sets and things. What did they? I'm trying to think what the post-episode "This Is How We Made It" bit was, but I forget. I remember for the next one, so I'll talk about it for the next one. But yeah, that was a good one. And then Salty Dog, the Wishbone version of Treasure Island. And my blog post about Treasure Island is in the description below. It's a good and pretty easy read, so read the book if you can. Let's see. So this one starts. This is another historical type one, and I'm not exactly sure what the precise details are of the histories. The history is mostly a setup for the adventure. But basically, there's this old barn out in the woods, I assume Jackson Park, and the show opens with Wanda and everyone on bikes biking to this old barn called Trumbull Barn. Belonged to a guy named Trumbull who wrote some book, like an adventure book, and which features a character called Blackbeard, and which is a famous pirate, um, similar to Long John Silver, and and apparently there's a horseshoe somewhere in the barn that figures in the book, and Sam really likes the book. She's an adventure book person, I guess. And the barn is condemned and it's going to be torn down. So Wanda wants to make sure everyone sees it before it gets torn down. Um, so she brings everyone to see it, and Sam really wants that horseshoe, and she's not even sure it's there. She's heard that it was nailed above the door or something somewhere in that barn, um, but she's never gone after it. Maybe she didn't know where it was, but she's really into it. So she brings everyone, the whole trio, back to find it. Um, and in the meantime, parallel to this, Treasure Island begins with Wishbone playing, what's the kid's name? Jim Hawkins, I think. Yes, Jim Hawkins. And the book is good. It takes a while to get to the pirate ship, the treasure hunt part. There's a lot that takes place in an inn where Jim Hawkins works, and various piratey people coming in and out, trying to make various deals and keep various things hidden. It takes a while. Like when I was reading it, I thought, I want to go out on the water. When do we get to the island? When do we meet the dangerous pirate people? And the episode was kind of like that too. I was like, there's a lot. Why not just do the exposition thing that you did for Ivanhoe and that you've done for other things? Get past that. And let's get on the ship. But they don't, and it's fine. But I did write down a line when Wishbone as Jim Hawkins, they make the joke. Naturally, Wishbone, first thing he does on a pirate ship, he goes to the kitchen, which is called the galley, and he explains that. I'm not just explaining that. Wishbone explains that. And when Wishbone as Jim gets to the galley, the Long John Silver's parrot, up in a cage, talks, and Wishbone as Jim Hawkins says, "An animal that talks. Remarkable." So a nice little bit of irony there. There's a line later on or maybe the line was in the Count of Monte Cristo episode that I thought might have been improvised. What happens with the kids is actually just as interesting, if not more interesting, than the Treasure Island portion. Maybe because the Treasure Island portion is so well known, but and also we get the complete story with the kids, whereas we skip around through the book to get through as much as we can. But there's a storm that ends up trapping David, Joe, and Sam in the barn, and that storm also sets the barn on fire. Lightning comes down through the roof of the barn and strikes some hay, and they are trapped in the barn. They can't get out. So Sam risks climbing up an old ladder to get to the loft, where she can open the door of the loft and get out that way, and then she can open the door for the rest. And I think maybe she intended for them to follow her up the ladder, but the ladder breaks. They cannot. And she sees the horseshoe, but she doesn't grab it because she's got to save her friends. But the horseshoe does draw her eye to a rope that turns out to be the solution to her problem. So the barn eventually burns down, and this is where the post episode, "This is how we made it" thing happens, because Wishbone narrates, the barn looks old, but it's actually brand new. We built it to look new, and then we had to burn it down. But we don't want to burn down the whole big thing, which we built in the middle of an old wood, so that to emphasize how old and overgrown the barn is. So we built a scale model. We burned the scale model, and then we superimposed that image over the full-size barn for the episode, and it looks beautiful, especially for the early 90s. So I mean, I knew it. I know that that's how that sort of thing works, but it was fun, and I remember probably I was impressed by that kind of detail in when I was a kid. So, long story short, which is what these episodes are to their novels, Wishbone is also in the barn, and of course the kids are gone and there's a storm. The parents get worried. Wishbone is with them, but he manages to find a hole and dig out a hole underneath the wall of the barn. It's not big enough for the kids to escape, but it's big enough for Wishbone. Sam gives Wishbone the map to hold in his mouth, and Wishbone runs home and alerts the adults to where the kids are. And they arrive just as Sam is rescuing David and Joe. And so Wishbone becomes Lassie, and it actually says, "Eat your heart out, Lassie," which was another cute. This was a good script, this episode, but it's an intense. I remember saying this about another episode. It was very intense for a Wishbone episode. It was probably another episode that took place in the woods, so there's that. There's that. Very intense music, a little repetitive, the music, probably on a loop rather than played straight through, but very intense. And then at the end, which I guess it takes place a couple of days later, and Sam's dad is finally saying, you shouldn't have done this. This was very dangerous, but I'm proud of you because, you survived and you saved the other two. There's a whole meeting of families, and Wanda presents Sam with the horseshoe, which has been mounted by the Historical Society. Apparently somebody found the horseshoe in the wreckage of the barn, anonymously gave it to the Historical Society, and Wanda knew that it would be meaningful for Sam to have. And so she gives it to Sam. And so that was another very good episode. This was a very good pair of episodes. And it's one of the few, I would say, where what happens with the kids is stronger and more interesting than how the classic story is presented. And that's that for that. We're officially in the second half of Wishbone episodes now, and the very next one is David and Goliath. I don't remember that episode if I ever saw it, but the one after that is A Scandal in Bohemia, which is what I thought the Purloined Letter was. So that'll give you an idea what that's about, and it will be interesting to see it, having now read the Purloined Letter and A Scandal in Bohemia, and seen both Wishbone episodes in close proximity. In the meantime, let's wag another tail.